2 shots. Waking up a little bit here now, Jim.
There we go.
So it's that time of the year, right? Everyone's in camp. Bob Nutting's in town. He's there at the games. He's on AT&T Sports Center for his yearly appearance. And we just talked about Mitch Keller. So I don't know. Is it extension season?
Yes, it should be. I mean, it should be. We just saw. We'll get to it later in the show, but there was a big extension, on the other side of the country yesterday. But yeah, the Pirates have a few people who we could be talking extensions with. I think Keller's one of them. I'm not sure if I'm there yet with Keller, but you could probably start talking about that. But I mean, the two main ones obviously are Bryan Reynolds. That's been the story all off season. And then, I mean, O'Neal Cruz, you've got to think O'Neal Cruz. If O'Neal Cruz does what we think he's capable of doing this season, it's going to be too late to sign him to an extension after this season. So it's like, do we start those conversations now? Those conversations hopefully have already started. If they haven't, then we're kind of in trouble. But the Pirates payroll, I'm looking at Ethan's chart right now. It's sitting at $73 million, $73.2 million, right? Which means they've got room here to be creative with stuff. Like, I think we can all agree that, Bryan Reynolds, where we're with the information that we have, he wants 8 years, right? He wants somewhere in that $125, $130 million range. And there's a lot of people who are, say they don't want to be paying Bryan Reynolds that much money when he's 35, 36 years old, whatever it may be, right? Well, guess what? You don't have to. Like, get a little bit creative with this stuff. You got a $73 million payroll right now. If you can sign Reynolds to an 8-year, $125 million deal, give him 50 of that in the next 2 years, your payroll still sub $95 million.
Right.
And then once those 2 years are up, you basically have him for 6 years, $75 million, going forward, which he's easily worth that, right? I think we can all agree that. So you don't have to pay him 18, 19, $20 million when he's 35, 36 years old. You've got plenty of room in your payroll right now to make stuff happen. You could front load a Bryan Reynolds deal. You could front load an O'Neal Cruz deal and still have plenty of room so that 4 or 5 years from now, when you want to add other players to this mix, or if you want to extend other players, you have that money because they've got the room to play right now. They can play right now and add to this payroll this year because they're certainly capable of it. $73 million payroll right now. That's nowhere near where it needs to be.
No. And this is like what drives me crazy. First off, the people talking about they don't want to pay Bryan Reynolds, 8 years and stuff. That's the going rate for baseball. I mean, you're seeing contracts all over the place. Like, my problem and issue is if you're worried about Bryan Reynolds in 8 years, but like not caring about how he could help this team from today till like through 5, maybe 6 years, like what's the point? Like, we understand too, and we see it. And the reason we're here is because the Pirates wanted to buck the trend. Baseball runs in cycles, okay? Especially if you're a small market, it runs in cycles. So here's the idea. If you're worried about how Bryan Reynolds is going to be playing and performing in 8 years as well, that's probably your next rebuild. So capitalize and maximize from today through the next 6 years. And that's what that presents. And here's the thing, like, he might not. Like, that still could be valuable. And like you're saying, for the reasons that you could just get creative with that contract, kind of like what they did with Ke'Bryan Hayes, which is ridiculously cheap. And that's what the Hayes contract presents you. It says, hey, you can go ahead and have other extensions. You can sign people because this is a bottom of the floor extension. Like, he is only going to max out at $8 million when your window should be here. When the window of this Pirates team should present itself based off of the way you've rebuilt. If you are looking to compete, Ke'Bryan Hayes will maximize at $8 million. That is pathetically low. But regardless, that is also because last year it was front loaded. Like he was making $10 million and such. Like that's what it did. That's why it was a big win. It was a win because many people like us felt that's undervalued. That's very team friendly. And it was a big win too because of how it was creatively structured. So do the same with Bryan Reynolds, like you said. So make this year a little bit more than you would. So you're not so worried or uncomfortable about his 8th year. 8-year 130 is not out of the realm of MLB contracts. Like that's a very, I'm not gonna say team friendly, but that's a comfortable contract that any team should be able to manage. Any team, literally every, it is an embarrassment that you're arguing over $100 million contract right now, which we'll get to a little bit further. But yes, extension season, that should happen for Bryan Reynolds. Getting back to Cruz and Keller, I don't know like what the talks would be for Keller, but I feel like what you're talking with about Cruz, I kind of feel like with Keller too. Not so much that like if he has a good season this year, it's done. But I feel like this, and maybe it's coming off the 2 innings. So again, like, am I using
yeah, like how good is Keller gonna be?
But seeing last year, I felt more comfortable extending him. And it's just now seeing all the things on top of my comfort level. It's almost like maybe you better get it done now before Mitch Keller goes lights out and really solidifies. Again, I feel like even with Cruz, it's stupid and stop talking about it's too late. It's not too late. You just sign him for his value then. And I have to think like Mitch Keller's value could increase this year. So maybe now is a good time, but I could understand why you're uneasy because Mitch Keller's past isn't the strongest either.
Right. Yeah, I think I still am more comfortable seeing one more year out of Keller. Like, let's see one more year. He's still under team control for, if you include this year, 2023, 2024, 2025. Mm-hmm. So, like, we're not in a hurry here. We don't have to extend him right away. And then also with pitchers, I'm just less comfortable with pitcher extensions than I am hitter extensions, just because of the likelihood that a pitcher can just lose an entire year, Right. So that's it's fair. Like, do we want to hold off on that extension as long as possible? Because Keller hasn't had Tommy John yet, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And I get not all pitchers get Tommy John, but most do. Like it's a thing that most pitchers have to have once during their careers. Right. So it's like Keller's 26 now. Is he going to get it in the next 3 years? If he does, it might make sense to wait. But
for everyone listening to the show,
I know that's
blame
kind
Jim.
Of morbid. It's morbid talk right here, but I mean, you got it. That's something that you have to think about with pitchers. As much as it sucks to talk about something like that, because it happens more often than it doesn't.
No, you're right.
So I'm a little less like, unless you're coming at me with this guy's an ace, like this guy's going to be really good for a while. Like Garrett Cole, I would have been comfortable signing to an extension, right? No matter when during the course of his career, just because you kind of knew he was really good.
Right.
Keller, I think he's good. I think he can put up some like really good seasons. I think he'll be a decent pitcher in the majors for a while. I don't know where we value that at, right? So like, I don't know where we would be at with an extension talk for Keller. I'd have to kind of look a little bit more into it, but that's always kind of in the back of my mind with pitchers who haven't had Tommy John yet.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely fair. Like, I totally get that. Trust me. But I think what Mitch does present is he's going to be the vet. Like, he will be the vet here soon. And like, it's not that he needs to be a number 1 or number 2 guy, but I think we're seeing that he can pitch. He's a starter. And it wouldn't be bad to have him here through the next, again, 4 or 5 years, opposed to just 2 more additional years or such. But right, like you could be hesitant, and there's like, I'm not going to say this farm's flooded with like top end pitching, but there is a lot of arms coming up. So maybe like Mitch Keller is a type where you're like, you know what, we can just kind of figure it out like after this year, we'll find out if we want to or not. And if not, it's not the hardest. It's not the biggest hurt because we already have all these arms coming. And then there's stuff in the lower minors as well. You know, maybe you can make a trade here or there. We're like outfield, like Bryan Reynolds is like, there's not, it's bare in, you know, in that department. So extending Bryan Reynolds makes a lot of sense because it's not like there's much coming up to replace him, where Mitch Keller could maybe do so. So I get that. But to O'Neal Cruz, I mean, yes, I would love to see an extension today. I think it make like I am a believer in O'Neal Cruz. I understand what he did last year. But I just want to say too, like I don't like the talk of if he does what he's going to do this year, it's too late. It's not too late. You just have to now extend him to that market value.
Right.
And you can still do that because you have a $75 million payroll and you're choosing not to give Bryan Reynolds any of that chunk.
Yeah, I guess when I mean, if he, I mean, we talked about O'Neal Cruz in 30-30 the last time I think we got together, right?
Yeah.
If he goes 30-30, you can still extend him, but the asking price is going to be a lot higher, right? I don't know. If I'm Ben Cherington right now, like I am working to extend Bryan Reynolds, but extending O'Neal Cruz is my number one priority. Like locking him up and making sure he's in a Pirates uniform for as long as possible is my number one priority as the Pirates general manager. And I think, I tweeted this out yesterday. I didn't talk about it too much, but, the Wander Franco deal. Wander signed, last offseason, 11 years, $182 million. Wander's a little bit younger than Cruz. Wander, was a better prospect coming up than Cruz, more of a sure thing, right? But I think both have similar ceilings. I think you could definitely argue Wander's floor is way higher than Cruz's, right. But Wander's ceiling and Cruz's ceiling are probably pretty similar. So Wander, 11 years, $182 million. I mean, I think if you offer Cruz like something somewhat similar to that, doesn't have to be that high, maybe try to get an extra year out of it. I put out 12 years, $180 million. 12 years, $180 million for Cruz. That locks him up till he's 35. And that's not spending a whole lot of money on him. That's like if I were GM, I'm trying to get Cruz to sign that deal right now. And if you're O'Neal Cruz, I don't see why you wouldn't. You're going from zero guaranteed money right now to $180 million guaranteed dollars over the course of your next 12 years.
Yeah. I just I don't know how to react to that because that's a lot. I mean, again, that's huge. And I don't know Cruz's mindset. I don't know. Well, I know the Pirates mindset.
Sure. It takes two to tango. You're right.
But does it even need to get to 180? That's where I'm at. I feel like that's fair, for everything you're talking about, but could it even be for 150?
Maybe. I mean, let's be real. He still hasn't put up. Wander has put up two better seasons than Cruz has put up in a single season, and Wander's 21. So if we're kind of
there's a lot of risk
with
Cruz, and if you're throwing $150 million at me, that's why these young extensions make a lot of sense, and they look to be team friendly because there's a lot of uncertainty. Of course, they're getting paid nothing right now, so it's if you throw $150 million at me, how do I say no to that? Even though if I don't, there's an opportunity that I can make $250 million in my career. But you're giving me $150 million today. Let me sign. Let me go ahead.
I mean, Cruz is making $725,000 right now. He wasn't a huge bonus signing on the international market. He got almost $1 million, but you're looking at the course. When he's in the minors, he's making, $30,000, right? So he's not making anything. So yeah, you throw $150 million in front of O'Neal Cruz right now, it'd be hard to say no.
Right. So it's getting back to your point, that's what this year presents. Doing an extension right now is maybe that 150 looks very enticing, but at the end of this year, if he, like you said, if he does have a 30-30, and also too, think about what Cruz does and how Arb values players. Cruz could end up being not a very high WAR player this year. He could strike out a lot and end up being again, not high, but a 2 WAR player, which is whatever every day. But if he has a 30-30 season and 80 RBIs. Like Arb's going to love that type of stuff. So he's going to get paid regardless, even though he might not be a performing type of player. So again, like there's reason that you might want to look to extend him right now. I'm with it. Again, like I'm a Cruz believer. I understand like his weaknesses, but the dude's good. Like the dude can easily be a good player and still have a lot of opportunities. It's like, can he be a really good player?
Yeah, I mean, by signing them to that, you're putting a lot of faith in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because yeah, there's a lot of fluctuation in like what O'Neal Cruz could become, right? Like he could, at a minimum, I think he could be just like a power hitting designated hitter, right? At one point in his career, right? Or he could be this freak Aaron Judge shortstop, right? That's like it could be between that and then anything in between. So, but again, like you look at that number and you're locked. If you can lock him up that long, what was it? 11 years, 150 is what you threw out.
Mm-hmm.
It's what, $13 million a year.
That's what I'm saying. And 15 years or 15, but
Yeah,
like 11 years from now.
It's nothing. It's
Right.
nothing.
It really isn't. Like that's again where we're getting at. Like it's not a whole lot of money.
It's a lot to me and you, right? But to O'Neal, to Major League Baseball in terms of salaries.
Even like Bob Nutting, if he doesn't, like I understand like they're talking about the ceiling and floor, and like his floor, even though it's lower than Wander's, dude can hit 30 bombs in his sleep. I mean, if he's a 200 hitter hitting 30 home runs, like if he's Adam Dunn, basically.
Yeah. Right. The Pirates are paying
like at $13 million a decade from now,
Santana,
you can move that contract.
The Pirates are paying Santana and Choi $11 million this year.
There you go.
Like just to kind of show you like what $13 million gets you right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's today, not a decade from now.
Exactly.
So, right. You know, I don't think there's risk, but I don't think the risk is that deep in even that type of a contract. And again, like you can probably move that for like what O'Neal Cruz will end up being, even at his lower end of what he can end up being. I guarantee you can move that contract. It's not like the Polanco situation, most likely.
Hey, you all, thank you for watching. I know we try to provide the most entertaining content that we can, and we'd love to spread it to as many people as possible. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you could take the 5 seconds to like this video and subscribe to the page, it helps out so much more than you know. Thank you, and let's go Bucks.